your eyes, look up to the skies and...
The 1970s didn't just listen to psychedelic rock, it was shaped by it. These weren't background songs. They were sonic experiments that bent reality, stretched time, and rewired how an entire generation experienced music.
And it's whispered that soon, if we all...
Artists were pushing into uncharted territory, extended jams that lasted 20 minutes, studio tricks that made guitars sound like they were melting. Lyrics that felt like fever dreams you couldn't quite shake. Some of these tracks were accidents. Others were obsessive laborers of love. All of them left a permanent mark on the decade. These are 12 psychedelic rock songs that changed the 1970s forever. 12. In a Gata da Vida, Iron Butterfly. The title was supposed to be In the Garden of Eden. But according to legend, vocalist Doug Ingle was so drunk when he sang the demo that the words slurred into incomprehensible gibberish. The band thought it was hilarious and kept it exactly as it was. A happy accident born from too much wine became one of the most recognizable song titles in rock history.
Don't you know that I'll always be true?
The full album version stretched past 17 minutes, built on a hypnotic organ riff, a pounding drum solo, and a groove that refused to let go. Radio stations played edited versions, but the album cut became legendary for its sheer audacity. Nobody had heard a rock song that long dominated the mainstream before. In a Gata da Vida became the first psychedelic track to sell over 1 million copies.
In a Gata da Vida, honey, don't you know that?
It proved that audiences didn't need 3-minute pop songs to stay engaged. Sometimes the trip was the entire point. 11. Time. Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd had already established themselves as masters of atmospheric rock, but Time hit differently. The song opened with an assault of clocks ticking and alarms exploding. A sound effects sequence the band recorded by visiting an antique shop and capturing every timepiece they could find. It was disorienting, jarring, and completely intentional. They wanted listeners to feel time slipping away before the first note even landed. The lyrics cut deep.
You wither and waste the hours and enough and waiting.
Roger Waters wrote about the quiet terror of wasting your life, waiting for something to happen while the years disappear behind you. It wasn't a party song or a love ballad. It was an existential crisis set to a slow, burning groove that built into one of David Gilmour's most soaring guitar solos. Time became the emotional centerpiece of Dark Side of the Moon, one of the best-selling albums in history. The song taught a generation that rock music could be philosophical, cinematic, and painfully honest all at once. Sometimes the most psychedelic trip is realizing how little time you actually have. 10. White Rabbit, Jefferson Airplane. Grace Slick wrote White Rabbit on a cheap piano while listening to Miles Davis and thinking about Alice in Wonderland. She was fascinated by how Lewis Carroll's children's story was packed with drug imagery that parents happily read to their kids. Pills that make you larger, potions that shrink you down, a hookah-smoking caterpillar. Slick thought the hypocrisy was hilarious and decided to throw it right back in everyone's face. The song built slowly on a hypnotic bolero rhythm, climbing and climbing until Slick's voice exploded with the command to feed your head. It was only 2.5 minutes long, but felt like a journey into another dimension entirely. Radio stations weren't sure what to do with it. Some banned it, others couldn't stop playing it. White Rabbit became the anthem of the 1967 Summer of Love and carried its influence deep into the 1970s. It proved that psychedelic rock could be smart, subversive, and dangerously catchy all at once. Sometimes the most radical statement fits inside the shortest song. 9. Space Oddity, David Bowie. David Bowie was a struggling artist in 1969, searching for the gimmick that would finally make people pay attention. He found it in the story of Major Tom.
Ground control to Major Tom.
A fictional astronaut who drifts away from Earth and chooses not to come back. The song was melancholy and cinematic, built on acoustic strumming that gave way to eerie synthesizers and a haunting sense of isolation. It didn't sound like anything else on the radio. Bowie released it just days before the Apollo 11 moon landing, a timing choice that was either genius marketing or pure luck depending on who you ask. The BBC used it in their coverage of the lunar mission, instantly connecting Bowie's lonely astronaut to the real thing happening in the sky above. Suddenly, everyone knew who David Bowie was. Space Oddity launched a career that would span 5 decades and countless reinventions. It proved that rock could be theatrical, narrative-driven, and emotionally devastating all at once. Sometimes the outsider who drifts away is the one who captures everyone's attention. 8. Paranoid. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath needed a filler track to round out their second album. They had a few minutes of studio time left and nothing prepared. Guitarist Tony Iommi came up with a simple driving riff on the spot, and the band knocked out the entire song in about 20 minutes. Bassist Geezer Butler scribbled lyrics about depression and mental illness almost as an afterthought. Nobody thought twice about it. Paranoid became their biggest hit and one of the most influential rock songs ever recorded. That hastily written riff bridged the gap between psychedelia and the heavy metal that would dominate the coming decade. The song reached number 4 in the UK and turned Black Sabbath into global stars. Sometimes the filler track builds an entire genre. 7. Riders on the Storm. The Doors. The Doors recorded Riders on the Storm in 1971, just weeks before Jim Morrison left for Paris, where he would die shortly after. The song floated on a hypnotic jazz rock groove, with rain and thunder effects layered underneath Morrison's whispered vocals. It felt like a ghost story, eerie and dreamlike.
Into this house we're born, into this world we're thrown.
Completely unlike the aggressive rock that had made them famous, Morrison's lyrics painted images of killers on the road and a world that felt unstable and dangerous. The whole track drifted like fog rolling through an empty highway at midnight. Nobody knew it would be their final statement together. Riders on the Storm became one of the Doors' most enduring songs, a haunting farewell that still sounds like it's coming from somewhere beyond. 6. Comfortably Numb. Pink Floyd. Comfortably Numb almost didn't happen. Guitarist David Gilmour had a musical idea he'd been developing for a solo project. Bassist Roger Waters had completely different lyrics about emotional detachment and childhood fever. The two pieces didn't naturally fit together, and the band argued over how to merge them into something cohesive.
There is no pain, you are receding.
They finally stitched the parts together into a song that alternated between Waters' cold, spoken verses and Gilmour's soaring, desperate choruses. The contrast created something that felt like two people talking past each other, unable to connect. Gilmour's guitar solo at the end became one of the most celebrated moments in rock history. Comfortably Numb became the emotional peak of The Wall and a stadium anthem for decades. 5. 21st Century Schizoid Man. King Crimson. King Crimson's debut single hit listeners like a hammer in 1969. The song opened with distorted vocals, chaotic saxophone, and a riff so aggressive it barely felt like rock music at all.
Yes, seed, blind man's greed, poets starving, children bleed.
Robert Fripp and his band weren't interested in peace and love. They wanted to capture the anxiety and madness of the modern world in sound. The lyrics screamed about politicians, war, and a society coming apart at the seams. The instrumental breaks spiraled into jazz fusion chaos that felt genuinely dangerous. Nothing on the radio sounded remotely like this. 21st Century Schizoid Man blew open the doors for progressive rock and proved that psychedelia could be angry, complex, and confrontational. It wasn't a trip to escape reality. It was a trip straight into the nightmare. 4. Echoes. Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd spent months piecing echoes together from random studio experiments and fragments that didn't seem to belong anywhere. The song stretched past 23 minutes, built on a strange sonar ping that guitarist David Gilmour created by accident while running his instrument through a wah pedal. That underwater pulse became the backbone of a track that felt like drifting through the deepest parts of the ocean.
And deep beneath the rolling waves in lavish.
The song moved through phases. Gentle passages gave way to howling guitar storms before settling back into meditative calm. Vocalist Roger Waters wrote abstract lyrics about connection and strangers passing in the street. It wasn't a traditional rock song. It was an experience, designed to be absorbed rather than simply heard. Echoes filled the entire second side of the metal album and became a fan favorite that the band performed live for years. It proved that rock music could be ambient, cinematic, and endlessly patient. Sometimes the longest journey takes you somewhere no short song could ever reach. 3. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath wanted to scare people. Guitarist Tony Iommi built the song around a tritone interval, a dissonant chord combination that medieval composers called the Devil's Interval and actually banned from church music. The band leaned into that darkness completely, crafting a slow, doom-laden track about a figure in black appearing to announce your death. Rain and thunder opened the song before that iconic three-note riff dropped like a hammer. Ozzy Osbourne's vocals sounded genuinely terrified, describing a satanic figure that paralyzes him with fear. The whole track dripped with dread and menace unlike anything rock music had produced before. Black Sabbath didn't just write a creepy song, they invented an entire genre. Heavy metal, doom metal, and every dark subgenre that followed can trace its roots back to those three notes and that thunderstorm opening. The song proved that rock could be genuinely frightening. Sometimes the scariest sounds open doors that never close. 2. Stairway to Heaven. Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant wrote Stairway to Heaven in pieces, stitching together fragments that evolved from a gentle acoustic folk ballad into a thundering rock epic. The song started quiet and introspective, Plant's lyrics wandering through mystical imagery about a lady buying her way to paradise. Then the drums kicked in halfway through and everything transformed. Page's guitar solo became one of the most celebrated moments in rock history.
My spirit is crying for leaving.
A melodic climb that felt like ascending towards something transcendent. The whole song operated like a journey, taking listeners from whispered beginnings to a triumphant, crashing finale. Radio stations rarely played 8-minute songs, but they made an exception for this one. Stairway to Heaven became the most requested song on rock radio for years, and defined Led Zeppelin's legacy. It never received an official single release yet, became one of the most recognized compositions in music history. The track proved that rock could be epic, spiritual, and structurally ambitious without losing its emotional core. Sometimes the stairway you build note by note reaches higher than anyone expected. 1. Bohemian Rhapsody. Queen. Freddie Mercury spent years carrying Bohemian Rhapsody in his head before he finally convinced Queen to record it. The song had no chorus. It shifted from ballad to opera to hard rock without warning. It lasted nearly 6 minutes. Every rule in pop music said it shouldn't work. The band spent 3 weeks layering vocals, creating a wall of sound that felt like a symphony collapsing in on itself. The label thought it was commercial suicide. Mercury insisted it be released exactly as he envisioned. Bohemian Rhapsody hit #1 and became one of the most iconic songs in rock history. Sometimes breaking every rule is the only rule that matters. And that's our list of psychedelic rock songs that rewired the 1970s. These tracks didn't just soundtrack the decade, they expanded what music could be and left doors open that still haven't closed. Which one bent your mind? Drop it in the comments, smash subscribe, and I'll see you next time.